So, which of the three project management structures covered in Chapter 3 is the correct management structure to pick? The answer is it really depends. So, how is our organization set up? How many projects do we have on a yearly basis? What is our level of resources? Financial, human, physical? How important are projects to the success of our firm or to our strategic plan? There is no clear answer that any of the project management structures are the project management structure. We should think about these different things. What's the size of the project? What is the strategic importance? Within our organization, what is our need for innovation? What is the need for integration? What is our environmental complexity? What are the kind of external issues that our team faces or our organization faces? What are our financial and time constraints? There are only 24 hours in a day. We only have so much money. We only have so many employees. And then what is the stability of our resources and our resource requirements? Are we going to be able to say we can provide on a long term the amount of resources that we need to get a single project and or multiple projects done? So we need to take all of these things into consideration when we're thinking what is the right project management structure for our organization. And that comes down to our organizational culture. So that's, in simple terms, the personality of the organization. So organizational culture is defined as a system of shared norms, beliefs, values, and assumptions which bind people together and help us create shared meanings. So what makes our organization us? How do we feel about our organization? Do we feel dedicated to the organization as a whole, or are we more dedicated to our own department? Is the organization siloed in that each unit works independently and we very rarely share resources or communicate with each other? What's the management system of our organization? What's the standards of behavior? So do we say our workday is 9 to 5, but most people come in at 8? That's a standard of behavior that is part of that organizational culture where we might say one thing, but then the employees behave in a different way. And if you come in as a new employee and don't behave in that way, you are ostracized in some way, or you're going to conform to that. So does everyone wear jeans to the office, or is everyone wearing a suit and tie? These are some of the key dimensions that define our organizational culture. So what is our member identity? Do I identify that I'm in a specific job or that I'm a part of the organization as a whole? Do I feel part of my team where I think my individual work is part of supporting a team, or that the organization focuses more on individual work and doesn't really emphasize teamwork? What's our management focus? Is it people driven, to where we're really human resource driven and we have flexible work hours and flexible workforces, or is it task driven, where we just want people to complete tasks and we can have a revolving door of people as long as those tasks are being completed? And then we have others. How do we reward performance? What is our conflict tolerance? Do we encourage our employees to take risks? Do we encourage high innovation, or do we just say work on tasks? Some of the examples that the textbook talks about, one is 3M. So 3M has a culture of innovation, and they give employees time every week to just work on new projects, whatever that employee wants to work on. It doesn't even have to be related to what their job duty is. And it's to drive innovation and think of new ideas. Google has a similar approach. They have a certain percentage of time where they just encourage people to think outside of the box and think about new things, or to work on individual or team projects that aren't even part of the current organization, but potentially could become new projects or new ideas. And then other businesses don't have that level of innovation, or they don't work in an industry where innovation is important, like Google does in a tech industry. So that might be more task oriented. And instead of rewarding innovation, we're more likely to reward our ability to complete our daily operations. When you think about the culture of the organization that you're currently working in, or one you might have worked in the past, you might be able to think of organizational cultures that have been toxic or volatile, in which it's really hard to get even your job completed because the culture doesn't really support that. When we're looking and trying to identify the characteristics of an organizational culture, we need to really study it. And more than just looking at their website and seeing what their mission statement is, or what their annual report says about them, what does the news say about them? How do the people within the organization interact with each other? What is the dress code and the setup in the organization? What are the physical characteristics of the organization? We've seen a huge shift in org culture in the last few months just because of the pandemic. So for example, there was a large organizational culture in some industries that said employees had to come to the office specific time every single day. And if they weren't at their office desk working on tasks, then we couldn't guarantee that they were being productive. So there were companies that have been very hesitant to embrace employees working from home, flexible schedules, or those kind of things. Well, then when we shut down large portions of the country in March in response to the pandemic, companies didn't have a choice but to let their employees work from home. Some organizations have found that this has actually made their employees more productive. In fact, Google announced that they may never bring their employees back to the office. They're going to stop renting an office building because they found that their employees are working very well from home. They're still getting their work done, they're still being very efficient. So we're seeing a lot of organizations that had dedicated office buildings now saying, why are we paying for an office building when we can just supply computer equipment and employees can work from the comfort of their home? We have the technology available, it's working well for us. Then we have a shift in organizational culture. So I think we're going to see over the next year that a lot of organizational culture has changed and shifted. We have an example of an organizational diagnosis worksheet. So when we talk about those four things, physical characteristics, their public documents, their behavior, and folklore behind the organization. So in this example, we have a modern office building. The offices are bigger in the top floors than the lower floors. We have formal business attire. We don't have casual appearance within the organization. What the behavior is, we might have very hierarchical decision making, comes from the top. We have people rarely work past 6 PM. And then we have some different information here. So we have a project manager fired for not following the chain of command when asking for additional funds. Okay, we have an employee that was considered a hero for taking responsibility for a technical error. So all of these things make up the culture of the organization. And the culture of the organization can highly affect project management. So as a project manager, it is important to understand the culture and how that culture can affect your projects. Do you have to follow a very specific hierarchy? Do you have to follow a chain of command? Are there rules about how many hours are worked each week? Even if they're not spelled out in the handbook, there's this unwritten rule about being in the office by 8 a.m. every single day. So the challenge for our project managers when we're navigating those organization or cultures are to be able that we can interact within that culture and still get our project done, that we understand the rules, even those unwritten rules that drive the culture of the organization and drive our ability to get our projects done. We have this same list of cultural dimensions, and then we look at what an organization supportive of project management is going to have. So our cultural dimensions between our member identity and team emphasis, those are all on a sliding scale. What this scale shows is that cultures are very supportive of project management are going to be extremely high in risk tolerance, conflict tolerance, an open system focus where we have wide communication and we encourage our team to work together. We're more people focused and more teamwork focused than individual and job focused. Also, that our members identify as I want to do what's best for the organization instead of I'm just here to do my job or I'm just here to make my department look good and I'm not that concerned about the organization as a whole. That is the end of chapter 3.